Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. If this is your first time visiting my channel, please go ahead, click on subscribe, and also click on the bell to receive all the updates and activities on my channel. Alright, so today we are going to be starting a project of many on this 2019 Polaris EVO 550. So for owners of EVOs, if you're buying this for your kids, you probably are already aware that Polaris doesn't offer a studded track for these sleds. They are pretty basic, but you know, safety is of the essence. So what we're going to do, we're going to stud the EVO, and so what we're going to do is we're going to stud it with 96 Woody's Gold Diggers. This is a pretty straightforward process. It's not that complicated. What makes it easier is that it's a fan-cooled sled. You don't have to deal with any coolers or anything like that as far as worrying about that. The EVO does come pre-installed with tunnel protectors, so the only thing you really need to do is buy studs and some tools, and you can get this thing done in a couple hours. So with that being said, let's walk over to the bench and I'll show you what you need to buy and the tools that you'll need to get this job done. As far as the studs that we're going to install, these are Gold Diggers from Woody's. They have been around for years. They are pretty much tried and true, and they are very reliable. They work great, and they're not that expensive. So the track on the EVO is the track that's been around for Polaris for a long time. It's called the Shockwave, and it's a little bit under 900 thousandths of an inch tall on the lug. Right, so these studs, as far as the length, from basically that shoulder to the tip of the carbide, it's roughly 1 1/16 inches. So when you install it, because the lug of the track is 900 thousandths deep, essentially you're getting a 1/4 inch of penetration, which is what Woody's, Stud Boy, and Max studs. That's pretty much what they recommend. You always want like a 1/4 inch of penetration over the top of the lug. So that's what we ended up with. The part number on this is GDP6-1005. You can go look at it on Woody's site to check out the specs on your own. As far as the tools that you're going to need a stud cutting drill. You don't want to use a standard twist bit. You want to use the drill that Woody's designs for it, because what it's designed to do is designed to cut a clean hole in the track, and it will eject the plugs through the cutout on the drill. So you want to use that. Another thing you want to have is just a awl. So if you do get plugs stuck in the drill, you can just eject them out that way. The last thing you want to do is you want to have a impact with a 1/2 inch deep well socket to reach over the stud as you're driving it down, and you're gonna want a Allen head attached to a socket, attached to a ratchet to allow you to reach behind the track and get that in there. This is a lot easier to hold on to this than just a standard Allen key. It's just a little bit more comfortable to deal with something like this. And the last thing you want to do is your pattern. So why don't we start? We'll start talking about the pattern, and I'll show you what we ended up with. If you're gonna install studs in your track, you're gonna need a pattern. Stud patterns have changed dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years. Before, it was not uncommon to see 144 studs in a 121 inch track. It was across every window and across on the outside of the track. Over time and everything else, the engineering teams and consumers have kind of realized that there really is no need to have studs on the outside of the track, outside of the rails, because that really contributes to track failure. So because of that, we're not going to be installing studs on the outside belts. We're just going to put them on the center of the track, right? So the pattern I'm using is called a repeating 3, where it's basically 2 studs close to each other, and they're separated by the width of the backers. And then from there it goes to 2 more studs. Same thing, it's separated by the width of the backers. And then you have 2 studs on the ends, which forms a repeating 3, right? So what I've done is I've taken a yardstick, I've made a pattern, I drilled a hole through the top of the stick, and I inserted a bolt through it, so it'll allow me to basically hang the pattern on the track while the sled's on its side. And if we look, I have a couple lines. Basically, these 2 outside lines represents the where the window on the track occurs. And then what I did is I created 2 additional lines inside of that, which is basically where I want the backers to exist no further past that point. So essentially, I have 3/4 of an inch on each side of the stud pattern that it's not going to be anywhere near the window. Which is good because you don't want your studs and your backers interfering with your drivers. So this is all I've done. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and lay the sled on its side, and I'm gonna start installing the studs and going from there. All right, so what you want to do first is before you roll the sled on its side, put a blanket and some other stuff underneath it, so while you're working on it, it's not scratching any of the panels or the plastics or the tunnel or anything like that. I always roll it on the clutch side, and before you do that, make sure you turn the gas off. Okay, so we've just finished studying a section of the track, and here's a pattern: 2, 2, and 2, and then it resets 2, 2, and 2. All right. So here's a pattern that we talked about that we made up on the bench, and again, the way this works, now that we have the sled on side, basically you just take it, you hang it in the window, and essentially you drill, right? So what you want to do is, the pattern is a repeating 3. So now that we've done the 2 outside, we're going to do for the next section, we'll do the 2 closest, and then the 2 that are right by each other, and then it resets, so it's a repeating 3, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna advance the track. We're gonna roll it out down to the next section. I'm doing 10 studs at a time. In hindsight, I should have taken the belt off the sled to make it a little bit easier to roll, because with the belt still on there, I can feel a little bit of resistance on it. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna roll the track into the next area we want to go to. All right, so this is where we need to be. So again, it's a repeating 3. So now we've done the 2 outside. We're going to do the 2 next. And all you're going to do is you're just going to take your template, make sure it's centered approximately in the window, and go to it. Go to the next one. Okay, now the pattern's going to repeat, so we're going to go back to the outside holes. Move it to the next window. And finally, the last 2. So that's all we're gonna do for now. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So now just take your studs, reach through the track, line it up, and pull it through. What you want to also do is make sure the rubber plug came out. Now that you have all your studs in place, go ahead and just take your backers, whatever you're going to use. Put your backers in place. Slide them on. Now that you have the backing plates, what you want to do is you're going to take your nylock nut, advance it on the stud, and finger tight it. And what you want to do, if you are using square backers, go ahead and set your alignment on it so it's nice and straight, because once it starts to make contact, it's pretty much going to stay in place. And we're just going to do the same thing for the remaining 9. Okay, so now that you have the studs inserted, the backing plates on, as well as the nylock nuts started, all you're going to do is grab a wrench, and I'd highly recommend grabbing a Allen key socket, because it's a lot easier to deal with this than just a regular Allen key. It gives you something a little bit more substantial to hold on to. And all we're going to do is we're just going to, I'm going to use an impact. This is a 1/2 inch deep well socket, and all we're going to do is we're just going to torque them down. All right, so we just finished up. It only took about a couple hours, and as you saw, the process is pretty straightforward, not that complicated. All right, we just came back in from a short little ride around the yard, and it's running great. So you can definitely tell the studs are on there. So, and again, if you have a new rider or a child or a youth on here, you know, safety is of the essence, and I think studs are kind of required, just to make sure that the kids aren't going to run into any issues that they may be unfamiliar with as far as ice or something like that. So studding this EVO is pretty much mandatory. All right, so if there's any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments box. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day. See ya.